When the East India Company started out in India, first as a business enterprise, and then started winning many territories, started ruling, and then captured the whole nation. And after that, only then, these 10 Aasuric phases really started showing up. Systematic deindustrialization and economic exploitation. This we already know how all the weavers in India lost their jobs, and how so much loot from India has been taken. And next is the bureaucratic suppression of national economic development. So whoever was trying to start Swadeshi industry in India was brutally suppressed. Disruption and distortion of agrarian systems, because India had a very well established irrigation and agrarian systems, and the entire British administration was so much tax centric. Their only goal was not to grow the agriculture, but to collect as much tax as possible. Whether the crop goes or not, is to be paid. So that really killed traditional Indian agriculture, and so much was its impact that till today the Indian agriculture is not able to recover from that setback. And even in the post-independence era, many of the government policies were kind of continuation of the British policies. Amplification of agrarian inequalities and creation of collaborating vested interests. In the pre-British period, there was local governance, and there were panchayat systems, and each village was empowered, and this agrarian society had its own self-governance method. But with the British Raj, local power centers emerged, and these local power centers became chamchas of the British rule, and ultimately the common people suffered uh, under the twin brutality of the local guy as well as the British. Fifth, sustained food insecurity and recurrent famines. So, till the pre-British period, famines used to happen in India due to natural reasons. And people had their own methods of facing that famine and coming out of it. They would migrate to some other town, and once the situation improves, they will come back. Uh, there are so many stories of migrations, and in almost all of them, we have famine as an undercurrent. But what the British did, so the British created famines are not of this kind, right? It was not natural. I mean, we all must have read in the history books. Instead of growing food grains, the British forced the farmers to grow indigo, which is used as a dyeing agent in their textile industry, right? So, so that created a food scarcity and food insecurity and artificial famine, and people didn't even know how to handle such large scale famines. So millions of people, actually multi-millions of people, are supposed to have died in the British induced famines. Intensive social stagnation with exacerbation of social hierarchies. So the Indian society already had some social hierarchy, and it was getting worse during the Mughal period. And the British colonialism worsened it still further. It made uh, untouchability, which was already a practice, even more severe. And more deprived communities became suddenly untouchable under the British rule, who even before 100 or 200 years back were empowered communities. Alienation of indigenous communities from natural resources. So that was the moment you read this bullet, we talk of the salt tax, right? Salt was something, a natural resource to which everyone had a right, but British taxed it. The eighth point is erosion of indigenous educational institutions. We all know how the traditional Gurukula system, they were operating in such a good manner that even the Britishers made records of it, and they thought that the system here was much better than what was there in their own country. Disruption of religious and cultural diversity. I mean, India had so much religious diversity without anyone disturbing it, except, of course, the alien Islamic invaders and the Islamic tyrants. But the Britishers brought in the additional thing of the Christian propaganda proselytization and Christian conversions that eroded religious diversity here, ruthless imposition of political imperialism to such an extent that even basic human rights were curtailed. So we all have read the history of freedom struggle where people were jailed or sometimes killed simply for chanting Vande Mataram or distributing some pamphlets, etc. The British colonialism was this 10-headed monster like Ravana,